All right, so it's time to talk about some more anime news. I've got 3 news topics here. We're going to start off talking about some big news with Sony and their control of Crunchyroll and what that might mean for the anime physical media space. We're going to talk about the new Naruto live action and just live actions in general for a little bit. We're going to have a little discussion about that before rounding this up with some recent news on the Warner Bros. Paramount merger that's hopeful, maybe. I'm still skeptical, but we'll see. So be sure to stick around for all of that and subscribe to the channel if you want more anime news and reviews. Let's get right to it. So we're going to start off with Sony, and usually I don't talk a whole lot about gaming. This is not a gaming channel, but it's really important for context to start with this PlayStation news. So PlayStation announced back on July 1st that they are going to be ending physical disc production in January 2028, and for new games released on the PlayStation consoles, it's going to be digital only. Sony claims they're doing this in response to consumer preferences, claiming that a lot of gamers prefer buying things digitally than they do physically. Quoting from the PlayStation blog, "This is a natural direction for Sony Interactive Entertainment to adapt to consumer trends as the general preference for digital media significantly outpaces physical discs. This transition will enable us to align more closely with how most of our community prefers to access and play games today." Now, I'll say for some background information, I work consumer support for Nintendo of America for a very long time. And there's a lot of people who do prefer buying things digitally. A lot of people have mainly digital collections, especially like if you have a family, it's a lot easier it's convenient to not have to take everyone out, go to the store, you just buy it digitally and it's right there. And that's not to say I agree with this change. I just think that they are probably correct that this is how most people do buy their games today. And that's a problem because if you know anything about digital ownership, or if you have previous consoles from any of the big 3, and if you have an Xbox 360, a PlayStation 3, a Wii console, any old console, you know that those stores on there don't last forever. And your accounts tied to it can get harder and harder to maintain or go back to. Or even, keep your purchases from one console to another. I went through this when I was working support for Nintendo, and we closed down the Wii store, we closed down the 3DS store, the Wii U store. The background things you have to do for that and the amount of consumer support you have to go through gets more and more difficult as you move away from those platforms. And these companies don't expect a lot of people to care, it feels like, or just move on past your games. You had your time with them, now you can just forget they exist forever, which is totally a thing that people love to do, right? If you've learned anything about the retro game market, you know that gamers just hate going back to their old games. They're totally not completely inflated in price. This is a concerning trend. And even if most people don't play their games physically or buy their games physically, a lot of people still do and are evangelists for buying things physically. It is important to have physical media because there's a lot of ways to lose access both to your accounts, your Sony account, your Nintendo account, your Microsoft account. There's a lot of ways to lose access to those, to have a lot of difficulties reclaiming those, especially if you don't have access to old emails. For a lot of people, especially people who are not maybe as online savvy as I or a lot of viewers here may be, this is going to be a very difficult trend. Especially if you're a family, like one of the biggest situations I'd ever have is trying to communicate to families how games work, how sharing games work when you have multiple people on multiple, say, Nintendo Switch consoles. They've changed it a little bit now. It works a little differently, but I would advocate for a lot of people, the easiest and most simple way to have multiple consoles and multiple children play on multiple, want to play different games, is to buy things physically, because you don't have to worry about things being attached to an account and all the different kinds of ways that companies will restrict you on how you use those accounts, right? Better just remove all the guessing and just have a little physical disc. It's way easier. But that's gaming news and not something I would normally cover on this channel, except that Sony also owns Crunchyroll and Funimation, and they also bought Right Stuff. So this makes this whole new announcement on Crunchyroll's side very concerning. So a few days ago, Crunchyroll put out this announcement on their end saying, a new Crunchyroll store and member experience is coming soon. Oh, what a beautiful experience it is. The experience is that you have to be a paying member, you have to be a Mega or Ultimate fan to access the Crunchyroll store. The new store captures the excitement of convention-exclusive merchandise, collectibles, curated drops, and limited release products inspired by the anime series you love. So Crunchyroll, which again is also owned by Sony, is announcing that they're making massive changes to the Crunchyroll store, which is a big place for people to go to buy anime products of any kind, especially Blu-rays. Now, we already talked about the issues with physical media and why it's important for gaming. On the anime side of things here, preservation is way more important because your game doesn't just like get removed from your account randomly. In some cases, it might happen, but that's not really what happens. If you buy a game, it should stay on your account no matter what, right? There's a purchase that's been made there. The problem with if you're not buying anime, you're either pirating it, which a lot of people do, and that's great for them. You have your access to all your things through your pirating websites, and you don't have to worry about this as much unless your website gets taken down or it gets harder and harder to find things as they tighten in on copyright problems. Or like most people, the average consumer, especially, the more casual anime fan, goes on to Crunchyroll, Netflix, High Dive. You watch what other anime is streaming on there. And sometimes if you like it enough, you'll buy it physically, maybe. But not as many people do that anymore, especially with the prevalence of streaming. It's just not as common to do that. But unfortunately, for a lot of series, if you don't own it physically, there's not really a way to watch it, or there's very limited ways to watch it. If you're familiar with streaming at all, you'll know that shows and movies don't stay on streaming platforms forever. Even if something's a Netflix original, it doesn't always stay on Netflix, even though they have all the rights to it, and it seems kind of weird that their own content can get removed, or they would just remove it arbitrarily. They don't keep stuff on there forever. And in most cases, it's due to licensing. The streaming platform will have a license with whoever the rights holder is, and they have the ability to have that anime, show, movie, whatever on their platform. A lot of times those rights lapse, and if it's an older series, they might not ever get brought back, which is going to be more and more common with anime because there's so much anime out there. There's a lot of series that you may love that's never going to come back onto streaming if it gets dropped. So your only option would either be to buy it physically or to pirate it. And that's it, right? So Crunchyroll, this is today, earlier today, Crunchyroll removed 5 titles from here. Barakamon, Blood Blockade Battlefront, Orange, Grimgar, Ashes and Illusions, and Roka, Brave of the Six Flowers. Now, Orange is an anime that was on my watch list, so was Barakamon. And Grimgar, Ashes and Illusion, I did a video on this. I really like this anime. It's an isekai. It's a really good isekai. You can watch my video on it, though you can't watch Grimgar on Crunchyroll anymore. It's not available. Where is it available at? Nowhere. Which is what brings us back to the Crunchyroll store. Now, the Crunchyroll store is one of the biggest places to buy anime merchandise. That's a lot of different kinds of anime merchandise. It's manga, clothing, collectibles, toys of some kind, or, Blu-rays and DVDs. A lot of Blu-rays on here. A lot of stuff that is exclusive to the Crunchyroll store. And so what happens when in a couple weeks, this is paywalled and you have to be paying for Crunchyroll in order to buy physical media? And even then, these physical media prices, they're not cheap. Any kind of Blu-ray for anime usually is not cheap because it's a big source of funding for the anime studios. I've talked about this a little bit in prior videos, I think especially in my Zoids video. A lot of animation studios don't make a whole lot of money from their series being aired on Japanese TV or, on American streaming platforms. It's not where a lot of their money comes from. A lot of their money comes from the actual physical media. The deals depend on studios and how much a studio has control. Bigger studios can have more cuts of different things, more demand, more ability to make demands. But in general, one of the biggest things for animation studios is they love their Blu-ray releases. And Blu-ray releases in anime are super worth it because a lot of times they will reanimate scenes. So the TV version of something may not be fully finished and they'll flush it out, make it a little smoother, prettier on the Blu-ray. So your Blu-ray version of an anime, usually it's not that much different, but it could be 1 to 5 times better than the actual TV version. Plus, it's something that you own. You can't just be removed from a service. You own it. So this seems like a really strange business choice because by doing this, they are limiting a lot of access to people being able to buy anime Blu-rays. Now, the best things to do would be, there's a bunch of other websites you can go to. There's Amazon. I guess there's eBay. If you want to buy things used, you can go directly to places like Aniplex. Quick little interjection here, actually, because I double checked this after the stream. But if you go to Aniplex's website and you click on the Blu-rays, it actually redirects you to the Crunchyroll website. So forget all that. You can't use Aniplex to buy Blu-rays, unfortunately. But this is like one of the bigger marketplaces that you can buy a whole lot of stuff at. And that's just going to be removed as an option. It is never good to have less options. Even Crunchyroll as it exists right now, what Sony was able to do in the anime space was so wrong, because years ago, Funimation existed as a separate entity, and that was owned by Sony. And Crunchyroll, I think, was owned by Warner Bros, actually. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit here. But Warner Brothers sold Crunchyroll to Sony, who already owned Funimation. And then they bought Right Stuff, which was one of the biggest websites for buying anime merchandise. And they took these three pillars of the anime community, put them all into one, and they basically destroyed Right Stuff. And they have dismantled Funimation. And Crunchyroll is the only thing that remains. So you have more control. A lot of control in the anime space is for Sony. Sony controls a lot because they have the biggest platform. Crunchyroll is by far the biggest anime platform for streaming, for anything. Like they control a lot of the anime market here. They have basically a monopoly. Like there's not a whole lot of huge competitors. Netflix is probably the biggest one. They have their own anime they get exclusive rights to, or anime they help produce. So like Netflix does take a good chunk out, but it's not all that much, right? It's not as much as you think. Just to look at this Kotaku article here. Some anime fans call for boycotts as Crunchyroll nukes store and locks physical merchandise behind a paywall. Will the death of PlayStation discs extend to Crunchyroll's Blu-rays? But yeah, you have to be at $14 a month or $18 a month in order to actually buy into the store. And also the fact that they are leaning into FOMO and soaking service big spenders with limited drops rather than focusing on well-stocked merchandise anyone can buy. This is the other part of this. Like, my major concern is with Blu-rays, right? And access to Blu-rays. The fact that you need to have a Crunchyroll subscription to buy a lot of Blu-rays. But the other big part of it is that they're moving to this, like, gross, like, oh, here's a really select drop of merchandise for your favorite show, and you gotta get in now. And if you don't, you have to buy it on the secondary market for exorbitant prices, which is great. It's another thing that people are going to use for price gouging and scalping. It's going to be so fun. So fun how, like, every market is turned into this. It's like what they have with Pokemon cards or Magic the Gathering, right? Magic the Gathering does this a lot now. It's so gross. I hate this stuff. I hate this stuff a lot. Now, Sony doesn't have all much control over the actual anime space in Japan, right? And in a lot of other countries, like they control a lot in the American market. There are a bunch of other markets that they don't control distribution as much, like for like Australia or UK or other places like that. And those other places, those other markets will also put out Blu-rays and dubs and all these different, like you'll get access to them in English. And in this article, they're mentioning a few other options here. Right Stuff died for this, but you can shop places like Merry Manga, In Stock Trades, or Robert's Anime Corner, which are not places I personally used, but, you know, there's some suggestions to look. If you can get some anime merchandise, you should be trying to buy things on Blu-ray. You should be. And if you're not able, or if it gets harder and harder to buy things in this market, I highly recommend getting a region-free Blu-ray player so you can buy things from other markets and still play them on your Blu-ray, which is weird that Blu-rays have regions. Movies having region locks just seem ridiculous. But yeah, with these changes, I highly agree with this. Don't subscribe to them. Don't buy from them. Nothing. I just don't recommend doing it and not giving them your money, because this is disgusting. I will say with Blu-ray, it's not exactly the same thing as with gaming, because Blu-ray is also tied to movies, right? And the infrastructure around physical discs and for movies and for TV shows, that stuff is way broader and way stronger and way older. And there's a lot of people, a lot of powerful people who do not want to see Blu-ray movies go away. And so that format is going to be harder for Sony or any of these big industries to kill. But as there is more consolidation in these spaces, as companies grab more media entities, and they're all consolidated into like 3 companies that control everything, it is something you need to worry about. And it gets, again, harder and harder to watch like any kind of show unless maybe you find it on Tubi and it has a bunch of ads playing during it. It's not a great environment. Buy physical media. It helps a lot, or go to buy used physical media. Definitely go out there and just buy some anime, because having some physical anime is always good to have some. They can't take that away from you. You don't need a subscription service for the rest of your life if you have stuff on your shelf. All right, moving on. There's a Naruto movie that is in production. Lionsgate has put out an announcement here. We're going to read this really quick. Naruto filmmakers to launch worldwide casting search for live action film. So Lionsgate is doing a pre-production for their highly anticipated adaptation of Naruto, which is built on a massive fan base of one of the world's most popular manga franchises. The studio and filmmaker, Destin Daniel Creighton, is launching a global casting search for the 3 young shinobi of Team 7, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura. Casting for other characters will follow. This isn't going to go well at all. There's a lot of reasons for that. One, if they cast anyone that's not Asian to be a ninja, especially Japanese, there's going to be a lot of backlash. We'll just say that. The other thing is going to be translating Naruto to look fun or interesting in real life. Now, again, I've done a lot of videos on anime live action. I've talked about Cowboy Bebop live action, talked about the Avatar, Last Airbender live action, and the One Piece live action. And One Piece is probably the spiritually closest thing to Naruto, but the One Piece Netflix adaptation is great, and I love that. But it also follows a similar format to One Piece in that it is a show or episodic series that they condensed and moved really well to be packaged in an 8-episode TV show and spread out, so you actually get most of the information in a kind of truncated way, but you get most of the series, and it embraces its goofiness and its silliness because One Piece has a light, goofier comedic tone. Naruto, on the other hand, Naruto is one of those series that is ridiculous, bombastic, and kind of cringe. It's always been a little cringe, especially if you try to do any of this stuff in the real world. Now, Luffy can be cringe, but Luffy is a cringe character. Even the characters in One Piece see him as being ridiculous and a bit too much. In the Naruto world, you're kind of supposed to take it at face value. And it is very sad and serious, but also goofy, ridiculous, and bombastic, right? There's a lot of dissonance in it, and it works for Naruto. It works in the anime space. But translating that into a movie, I don't know how you're going to do that in a movie. I don't even know what they're going to adapt into a movie. How is that going to work? I don't think adapting a series as long and, I don't know, the early parts of it are kind of rocky and uneven as Naruto into a movie. I think that's destined for failure. It's destined to be a repeat of Dragon Ball Evolution. I mean, it's probably going to be better. Probably going to honor the source material more. Maybe they'll take hints from the One Piece series and, buy in and, commit to the goofier elements of it instead of Dragon Ball Evolution. But I don't know if they're going to be able to tell an actual compelling story out of this, or what exactly they would do. Would they just do getting the team together and going on a mission, fighting Zabuza? Is that it? Zabuza and Haku? Is that where they're going to go with this? Establishing Naruto and Sasuke's relationship? Or are they going to try to truncate it and go to Sasuke retrieval arc or the Chunin exams or something? It just doesn't make, if you're going to do it, which I don't think you should, why not do it as a series? Why not do it as a TV show? Right? I don't know. There's a lot of things that are going to be problems with this. I think whoever they cast is going to be dealing with a lot, especially these young kids, whoever they cast are going to be dealing with a lot, especially if they are not Asian and especially if they're not Japanese. It's going to be a problem. Casting a white guy as Sasuke or a white girl as Sakura. How is that going to go? How's that going to look? Terrible. I've given positive reviews to One Piece live action, effusively positive reviews. I love the One Piece live action series. But the thing that I want to stress about it is that, one, it embraces being goofy and silly, but also it's the exception that kind of proves the rule, right? You've kind of just see this with every clip I've seen of the Moana live action, which I didn't go see, and I'm glad I didn't. It's also a massive flop. Take that, Disney. Hopefully you'd stop making these stupid live action movies. But these adaptations of animation or a manga into live action just don't work on a lot of different levels. It is very hard without a massive overuse of CGI to make any of the fight scenes, the styles of these characters, or the worlds of these characters. The worlds, like if you're talking about Naruto, the world of Naruto, it's really, I can't imagine a way for you to take that and make that work in a live action setting. I really can't. Not in a way that doesn't seem like a fan film, like a really dedicated fan film. I don't see it. I don't foresee that making any money. And in a lot of ways, this desire to take everything from animated and like from a manga version and turn it into a live action movie, it's just because they don't think animated stuff will sell. They don't want to do like a new animated version of Naruto just because it's not going to sell with general audiences as much. You know, we can't market that to your mom and dad. You know, we need it to be live action and real so people take it seriously. And there are people out there that don't take animation seriously or won't watch stuff that's animated. I know people like that. I don't personally understand it, but it's a way a lot of people do feel. But that doesn't mean you should mine these things constantly for their content. I understand it's what the studios are going to do because they don't like gambling on new ideas. They always want something that is just an IP farm. They want to farm IP because there's some level of safety to it. And I get that. I don't agree with it, but that is what it is. But I don't know. It just always feels so creatively bankrupt to keep doing this. Hollywood will never learn its lessons. Even with Moana, I don't think like Disney will learn its lessons. I think they're going to still try to mine as much of their IP as possible. They're not going to understand that audiences just don't care. They don't care about this stuff. They don't want to see things remade constantly. They don't want to see a live action version because the live action versions are soulless. The biggest thing I can say is that maybe the news around it, maybe the hype around this movie that they're going to try to generate gets people to check out the originals. It's always the hope with this kind of stuff. Like I know for One Piece it's worked because One Piece was also good. So maybe that'll do something here, but I have my concerns. And I'm not looking forward to whatever disaster comes out of this Naruto movie. But it will be fun to watch in like a, train wreck kind of way. So for our last news story of the day, this is a returning story that I'm probably going to cover in every video that I can, especially when we get news like this. The Paramount and Warner Bros. Merger hit with temporary restraining order. Now, I've talked about the Paramount and Warner Bros. Merger before. It is a disaster. I mean, we just talked about the merger that happened between Funimation, Right Stuff, and Crunchyroll, and how big of a disaster that is for the anime space. Take that and times it by 1,000, and that's the disaster you have with this, right? Paramount and Warner Bros. Discovery are two of the biggest studios out there. For 2025, I talked about this a little bit in one of my previous videos, nearly every hit movie from 2025 was a Warner Brothers property or had something to do with Warner Brothers, right? In some way connected to it. Paramount has its things that it does that are interesting, but they're also owned by a right-wing billionaire in the Ellison family that is in love with Donald Trump because he stands for all the things that they care about, which is making more money and robbing taxpayers to get a bunch of tax breaks to make more money. They also put Barry Weiss in control of a lot of their news over at CBS. So Paramount has just been entirely gutted, like 60 Minutes and a whole bunch of their reporting is being gutted by right-wing grifters, like, again, Barry Weiss, who is an incompetent hack, all because they really want to try to nail in their ideas, their unpopular ideas about how you really shouldn't actually be all that scared of billionaires. And what if we gave Israel all of our money? What if we just, and this is a kooky, crazy idea, made Israel a part of the U.S. military so that we move money between it. It's harder for people to make stories about how much money we're giving Israel because it's hidden behind the Pentagon budget, and the Pentagon can't pass any kind of audit or anything. So it's impossible for people to actually have any form of accountability or even understand how much money we're giving to a foreign country to commit a genocide. Isn't that like a crazy idea which you just kind of think about, You think that's a joke. That's not even a joke. I'm going to put the news story right here on the screen for the video. Real thing that's happening. It's insane. Hope it doesn't pass. Maybe it will. Who knows? Now, for today's news, though, we have some good news. California District Judge Arcelia Martinez I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that name. Signed off on an order Monday after hearing arguments from both sides in an Oakland courtroom on Friday. The order puts a 14-day pause on anything moving forward with the merger. 14 days, not long, but that is at least something. There is a lot of state attorneys in numerous states that are setting up lawsuits, antitrust lawsuits against this merger, notably California being a big one. And because of that, Paramount has made threats that if California tries to push forward with that, they're going to pull out Paramount Skydance. And when they get Warner Brothers itself, they're going to pull everything out of California as much as they can to try to destroy, like, you know, Hollywood and everything, right? And move it to other states so they can, like, get back at California, or, like, threaten California. Whether or not they'd actually do that, I don't think so, because, like, that's such a commitment to resources for two companies that already don't actually have a lot of money. There's a reason Warner Brothers is trying to be acquired by people. They don't have a lot of money on hand. I hate, look at this wording here. The proposed deal would unite the storied film studios of Paramount and Warner Brothers, the CBS broadcast network, a spiraling portfolio of pay TV networks, including CNN, TNT, MTV, and BET, and streaming services Paramount Plus and HBO Max under one roof. Wow, like that's totally a good idea. Like you haven't seen these kind of mergers between Hulu and Disney Plus or Funimation and Crunchyroll just lead to a lot of friction where you have two websites for a long period of time and then they slowly merge together and then a whole bunch of stuff doesn't carry over and you have to go to usually they always go to the one that bought out the other one because the other service was inferior and had a poor setup. So typically, like, if this actually went through, I would expect they would move all of HBO Max into Paramount Plus, which is a thing that doesn't have any name recognition and no one uses because what the fuck does Paramount really have to offer? And also, I've never even used their UI. I don't even know how it is because I've never had a reason to use Paramount Plus. Who uses Paramount Plus? Hulu is one of the rare instances where you had this big streaming giant that actually kind of sucked, you know, and had horrible UI. I did not like how Hulu did anything. So it's a little better under Disney Plus, I guess. Not really. Not all that much. Again, don't like the fact that this got merged, and I don't like that Disney owns Fox. But that is water way under the bridge. Hard to go back to that one. And then the Crunchyroll Funimation thing, it's a disaster. Like, there's so many anime that were on Funimation that still aren't on Crunchyroll, probably won't ever be on Crunchyroll, and even if they do, will probably get removed and you won't have access to it anyway. Because what a wonderful world we have here. Streaming services turned out to be so good for all consumers, right? So good. Even more so than, you know, the Disney-Fox merger, which I think was a clear case of antitrust. This is an even clearer case of antitrust because not even Fox exists anymore, right? There are so few big movie studios left. Fox used to be one of them. Disney, Paramount, Universal, MGM is owned by Amazon now. There's not a whole lot out of there, not a lot of independent ones, right? Because the Disney-Fox merger already happened and you saw the drastic effects, so many different people getting fired, so many less projects being made. You saw horrible effects from that merger already occur. Doing that again when the market is already getting smaller and smaller has even more of an impact. There'll be fewer major studios and that'll be a disaster for a number of filmmakers. There's people who work in film and TV at all. Again, as I mentioned, there's a number of states already trying to bring lawsuits against this. There's Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Nevada, New Mexico, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, and of course, the state of Washington. Will that go anywhere? I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't really think so because the federal government, which would mainly be the one who would stop these kind of antitrust things, which is a lot of what Lena Khan did in the Biden administration, one of the few good things about the Biden administration from a leftist perspective. So, you know, my political leanings. But one of the few good things it is, they had some form of antitrust. And even then, they couldn't really stop a lot of mergers. Like they couldn't stop the, you know, Activision and Microsoft merger, right? That is horrible for gaming. It has a lot of consequences for gaming. But again, this one is far more consequential and will have far more direct effects on consumers and on the actual production of movies and TV in America. This is one of the biggest things, like this should not go through. Antitrust should stop this. But again, the Ellison family that controls Paramount and is wanting to buy Warner Brothers is friends with the Trump administration. They give a lot of positive coverage to them and they I know, are doing their best to make sure that Trump and his administration let this slide on through. It might come into a lot more scrutiny. It'll be difficult. And this is a good indication that it's going to be more difficult for them to do this. But I'm still concerned that it'll happen. And there's reports that have been out there that if they can't sell it all as one, that Warner Brothers will instead break into multiple smaller companies and sell off their individual parts. Like they'll sell off CNN as an individual thing. They'll sell off their movie arm as an individual thing. And again, the Ellisons mainly care about CNN, and they probably would just buy the CNN section of it, which would probably be better than them getting control of all of Warner Brothers. For the entire industry to be better at least. But I don't know. We'll see. This is a positive development here. Hopefully this will be stopped. This is really important for anime because these studios, a lot of these Western studios, Warner Brothers in particular, fund a lot of anime projects. Like Golden Kamuy, I know Golden Kamuy anime is like produced in part by Warner Brothers, or at least one of Warner Brothers studios. And they do put a lot of money into anime, and they have anime on their platform. I mean, through Adult Swim in general, they've made a lot of anime. Not all of it's been all that good, but they're a significant player in that. They're also a significant player in what we were talking about earlier. Warner Brothers has a huge division that puts out movies physically, a lot of older movies. So they are another aspect of this whole puzzle we've been talking about, of being able to preserve media, get media on physical discs, and so you don't have to always be beholden to a streaming service to watch something that you love. So that's that. That's what we're dealing with right now. It's concerning. I don't like it. Again, I'm hopeful that this restraining order is a sign of things to come, that maybe this will be stopped. But, with how the court system works these days, I see this going up to the Supreme Court. If it goes up to the Supreme Court, it will just get overturned, and the Supreme Court will say, do whatever you want. Corporations can do whatever they want. It's no big deal. We don't care. Antitrust? What's that? That's probably unconstitutional too. Who gives a fuck? But that's all the anime news I have for right now. If you like this video, be sure to like it. If you want to see more videos similar to this, you want to see reviews from me or anything else, be sure to subscribe. I always like making these anime news videos just to round up the horrors of the anime world and corporations trying to take away the things that you love. Thank you again for sticking through this, and I hope you have a great day, a great night, or whatever it is you're having. And stay rad.